Welcome to RCOAL Conversations. I'm Jay Howard, an instructor in the Department of Communication at Missouri State University, and we're here to have conversations with some of the amazing, dedicated people who make up the Reynolds College of Arts and Letters community. Thanks for joining us. On today's episode, I'm joined by Jen Murvin, an instructor in the Department of English and the owner of Pagination Bookshop right here in Springfield, Missouri. After that, I check in with Dr. Sean Wall. We talk about what's on our minds this week, and the conversation turns to a recent research interest of Sean's, which is the topic of anticipated grief and the stages of grief. In the conversation you're about to hear first, Jen and I talk about stories of connection between the College of Arts and Letters and Pagination Bookshop. We talk about the classes Jen teaches, including creative nonfiction, which is an interesting class to teach, especially right now, as well as courses about the graphic novel and sequential art, which are set to be part of the new interdisciplinary graphic narrative certificate. We also discuss the age-old question, does listening to an audiobook really count as reading? Jen, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much. This is very exciting.
So I'll just start off by saying I'm a huge fan of the shop. I have been to some of the poetry nights, poetry readings that you've held, participated in the book clubs. This was in the before times, you know.
Yes, yeah.
But I've also attended some of the virtual events you've held in the past year. And I even have a pair of socks with sloths reading books on them from Pagination Bookshop. So thank you for that.
Yay. I love those. Yes.
So since you're both an instructor in English and a bookshop owner, I would like to ask you about the overlap that may exist between those two vocations for you. Are there any stories of crossover between Pagination Bookshop and the Reynolds College of Arts and Letters community?
Oh my gosh, yes, for sure. Well, and I really came of age in the College of Arts and Letters at Missouri State in so many ways. I received my master's degree in English at Missouri State, and then I've been teaching in the English department for now 12 years. So in large part, yes, everything that I that I do professionally and with my work, in English and in, thinking about bringing literature to the community is so intimately tied to Missouri State and my colleagues and my mentors in the college. So yes, to me, pagination is just an extension of the work that I have been doing as a teacher for a long time. Springfield's a great town for the arts. And for me, the College of Arts and Letters has always sort of been the beating heart of that. And, I just kind of had this moment. I'm going to be 40 this year. And a couple of years ago, I just thought, I just kind of want to amp up and do something a little, I don't know if it was a midlife crisis or some kind of impulse, but I thought we just need an indie bookstore in town. And I've always had a passion for bookstores. Whenever we would go on trips, that would always be like my first place I would look up in the city where we would go. And, my son would be like, oh, Mom, another bookstore. I'd be like, yes, we're going to all the bookstores in the town. So yeah, in that way, for sure, I feel like just who I am is so informed by the college in so many ways. And then sort of formally with the things that we've done at the shop, some of the first writers I reached out to were former students, colleagues, a few we've had, in the before times come and do book releases at our shop. I was really excited that the writer Liz Brazil, who won the Prairie Schooner Book Prize, which is one of the most prestigious prizes. And then this past year, she won a National Endowment of the Arts grant. So she came and did a big event with us. And then and she was a former student of mine and a graduate of Missouri State. And then another student of mine, Brenna Warmer, we hosted her for her. Yes. Oh my gosh, you have her book right there, Honey Pot. Yes. So that was such a great event. And that might've been one of our last events, big events that we had in the shop, because that was over the holidays, moving from 2019 into 2020. So in that way, yes. And my students, bringing them in, colleagues, different of my colleagues have read at different open mics. And also we are part of the programming for Arts Fest every year. So for example, my colleague, the poet Marcus Cafagna, has read for that. And then one of my comic students, she is a beautiful illustrator, Ariel Messerer, did a lot of artwork in our shop. So she did some muraling in the shop, and she also has designed some personalized cards for us for the holidays. And then my colleague, Cole Klosser in the Department of Art and Design, who I teach comics with, designed our Pagination Bookshop logo. So that was his gift to us when we first started the shop. So yes, I could not do this without the beautiful family and community of the college.
That's so wonderful.
I already feel like I'm worried I forgot to name people. I mean, I should also say that my colleagues were, the first people I floated this idea by, and thinking everyone's going to tell me this is a crazy idea not to do it. But instead they all were like, yes, do it immediately. My dear friend Shannon Wooden, Dr. Wooden, who's in the department, was just a huge support. Lynette Cadle, Dr. Cadle gave us a bunch of books for our used inventory to begin. And then Dr. Mosier, Linda Mosier, I remember when I first announced that I was opening the shop, she sent me this beautiful set of postcards with this little card that said, dear brand new bookshop owner, with love and support from Linda. And so, in that way, my department has just been incredible. My colleague Leslie just came by the shop yesterday to get books for her son. And so, yeah, I feel like it's just a big extension of a big family that I already was really lucky enough to have in the English department and in the college. It's hard for me to separate my life because it's just this is just my lifestyle is my work with English and my colleagues, and who are all my best friends in the world, and then my students. And one of the most important integrations of my work in the shop is the fact that our employee, Shane Page, was my student, my undergraduate student in creative writing, and then a graduate student in creative writing. And now he is just the heart of our shop. He runs the day-to-day everything and is mostly the first person that people talk to when they come into the store. And I'm just so grateful to have him work for us and be part. He always says team pagination. Yeah. So the fact that my student is, a partner in all of this is a huge deal too.
I'd like to talk about the curated book bundles.
Oh yeah.
Been offering at the store. I got one myself.
Oh, did you like it?
Yeah, I loved it.
Good. Okay, good.
And yeah, it was amazing. And I'm assuming, so the context of this is, you're up and running for a few years, and then the pandemic hits.
Yeah.
And browsing is probably way down at the beginning of the pandemic, right?
Yeah, definitely. We were closed for about 8 weeks.
Okay.
To browsing.
Did that idea grow out of that as a solution to it, or?
Yes, well, curation was always such a huge part of our shop. I mean, one is a practical issue because our shop is so small. We have to be really careful about what we carry. And we did want to have a mix of new and used. And we've actually transitioned into more new books. And our used books are mostly in the vein of poetry, literary fiction, creative nonfiction, and some sci-fi and fantasy when we can keep them on the shelves. It's actually very hard to find really good used sci-fi fantasy. So we try to seek that out as much as possible. But yeah, the curated book bundles came. We had a dear friend donate a bunch of books to the shop from their library when they moved. And so we had these incredible books, and we thought, why don't we just do this bundle? Because we were already kind of doing it sort of in kind of a non-organized way. People would do this or ask us and we would do it, but we just hadn't formalized it yet into a product.
Okay.
But yeah, now we do. You can go on our website and just click on curated used book bundle and write a little note telling us what kind of books you like. And it's been one of our favorite things. We did a bunch for the holidays, and then we wrap them up all cute with tissue paper and ribbon and stamps. And it's fun. It's like a puzzle. It's, we're trying to match that new book that's just going to excite this reader, and so depending on who gets the order, either Shane will do it or I will do it, or often Shane and I will do it together and kind of consult and, be like, okay, what do we have? What is it? And it's just a lot of fun. I just did one this weekend. So yeah.
Well, yeah, it was a great experience. I did it during during the initial lockdown.
Yeah.
And when I walked in, there were just maybe 25 or 30 just bags with people's names on them. And I found mine and just went home like it was Christmas. But you mentioned the curation being a big part of your philosophy. And I read that in the mission statement on the website.
Yeah.
In one interview, you referred, I think, to yourself as, I think, a pharmacist for books.
Yeah. We always talk about that. It's almost like, you tell us what's going on with you, and maybe we can match a book for what you're going through, or, it kind of, I truly believe that literature has helped me get through things, or help me make sense of things that don't make sense. And so, in that way, I feel like books and reading and literature is a way to heal ourselves and to, confront things that we need to confront. And so, I use that term very loosely, but you're almost like a matchmaker, right? You're matching your customer with that book that might change their lives, which to me is the gift of teaching literature to college students. A lot of times students will come into my classes and maybe they've read, maybe they've been lifelong readers and they've been really voracious readers, which is fantastic. Or maybe they haven't really read very much, and the only novels they've read have been the ones assigned in school. And so it's been the gift of my life to say, hey, look at all these amazing short stories, or let's read these novels, or let's read these memoirs, and then have them write to me like, I just never really liked reading until we read this book, or I didn't know writing could be so funny until I read this story. And so, to me, again, the bookshop is just an extension of the work that I do as a teacher.
The other phrase that I loved from the mission statement that really stuck out to me was the magic of the browse.
Yes. That to me is the beautiful thing. Like, when we shop for books online, it's, Raven Bookstore in Lawrence, Kansas always talks about this idea of humans, not algorithms. And if we shop online, you don't get that browse. You don't get that, oh, this is a cool book, or I love this cover, or, this bookseller recommends this book and here's a little blurb about it. I'm just going to pick it up. And, you don't have that surprise when you're shopping online. So to me, that's the beauty of having an actual bookstore where you can physically pick up a book and put it down.
Book people are all about books as objects,
Yeah.
And I've had that experience so many times of walking into the bookshop and just somehow going into some kind of trance, and then finding myself back at home with like 7 different books, some of which I've never heard of before, and also a pair of socks.
Yes, you have to have the socks. We have so many book themed socks. Yeah, and everyone gets those for a gift.
And all kinds of other cool gifts too, right?
Oh yes, we have lots of different gifts, because just book anything is fun for me. Like, we have stickers and pencil bags and tote bags, and we actually have tattoos right now, like temporary tattoos, puzzles. It's so funny because I'm still that way, even though I know in my head, like, Jen, you own a bookstore. You don't need to buy 10 books at this bookstore on vacation. And where are you going to put that in your suitcase? But, it just happens. I go into the trance too. I can't help it. One thing that the people I don't feel like really realize about our shop is that we're a beautiful gifting service. Like, if you tell me that you want to send a puzzle and a book and a journal and some pens and an origami set to your nephew in Washington State, I do that for you and just send you an email invoice, and it's a beautiful personal gift. So if anybody wants to gift through us, it's one of my favorite things on the planet.
Well, you clearly have a passion for books, for literature, and also for teaching. And you've mentioned how this dovetails with your work as a teacher as well. So what classes do you teach at Missouri State?
So I teach in the creative writing program, and I've always been very interested in all kinds of literature. I originally started in the department just teaching fiction, and then I have a big passion for comics and graphic narrative. So I started teaching comics along with my fiction classes. This semester I have classes in creative nonfiction, which I really love teaching right now. It's a very interesting and intense time to be teaching creative nonfiction. But it's an honor and a privilege to, read students' very personal work where the stakes are extremely high. And I also teach a literature class for the creative writing program. We have a contemporary American literature class that I really love teaching. I teach that every other year, and I just teach really like beautiful contemporary novels that are engaging me. Sometimes I'll pick a book I haven't even read yet, but I'm hearing buzz about, and it seems like it's going to be important, and we read it together. And then I also teach a form and theory of prose graduate seminar, which is a really fun literature course where we talk about literary theory as sort of in relationship to the writing life and being a writer. And so we read typically in those literature classes about 8 books, 8 novels, and then plus the theory texts on top of that. So I just taught that in the fall. We had kind of an emphasis on magical realism and speculative fiction. So that was fun and kind of appropriate, I feel like, for what we're all going through. So yeah, I teach a lot of different classes in the English department, but it keeps things exciting and new for me, which I really love. And then, every semester I find myself assigning new books I've never taught before. So got to revamp all the materials, but I just get so excited. I read all these new books and I want to share them with my students immediately. The beauty of creative nonfiction is it's a huge umbrella, that covers just a lot of different writing. But to me, what makes creative nonfiction is it's a true story.
Yeah.
And so, there is invention. There's a lot of invention that happens with creative nonfiction, and it can be very experimental, or it can be more, on the side of reportage, or it can be much more memoir, or it can be something in between that's personal essay. Like, it's just such a wonderful wide range. I just love it, the range of it. And then the things that people are obsessed with and they just have to write about. Like, I just love that. It excites me as a reader. And it's a different kind of reading when you read creative nonfiction. And I think it's definitely a different kind of writing, and exercises a different part of you emotionally.
You mentioned it's an interesting class to teach right now, and you mentioned high stakes and students are writing personal things. Do you get that sense more now in this time of uncertainty than you would normally see?
Yes and no. I mean, I think definitely I see more students engaging in writing about political subjects. And I think more students just taking the classes. I've seen just more increased enrollment in creative nonfiction and interest in creative nonfiction. The amount of vulnerability and personal sharing and these kind of high stakes, that's remained the same. It just is sort of, I've been noticing some shifts in subject matter. But that could also be in relation to what I'm assigning, because, we're reading a lot of, we write directly out of the books that we're reading, so for example, I love to teach the book, The Undying by Anne Boyer, which won the Pulitzer Prize last year in creative nonfiction. And it's a stunning book about her experience with breast cancer and a double mastectomy. And she's a poet. And so the book is, yes, it's about that, but it's also about how do we write about pain? What are the stories that are told about illness? She writes a lot about the problems with the medical care system in our country. She has this one section where she just adds up how much her treatment has cost. And she says, am I worth this amount of dollars? I mean, it's just, so when students are reading that and I ask them to write about the body, or write about narrative medicine, or write about how we talk about pain, that's going to lead to a certain kind of writing from them. So there's always been, I think it just is led by the books that we're reading and the things that we're talking about. It will get them excited to write. But it's a big responsibility. Sometimes I just have to take a break after reading my students' work and responding to them. Sometimes it takes me 3 hours to respond to one student's 500-word passage because it's very personal and intense. And I have to find that right balance of addressing the content and then also the techniques that the student's using. So it's very hard.
That's heavy.
It's very heavy. But it's a gift and an honor, to be on the other end. Sometimes I know students are writing this and I'm the only one who's ever heard them say that. And that's fine. It's a perfectly safe space for them to do that. But yeah, I take that responsibility very seriously. And sometimes I have to take a little beat after it because but it's beautiful. And that's why I feel like when you teach writing, like I said, like it's hard for me to separate the shop from the college, from just my home and myself, because it all feels like it's the same.
One of the things that you mentioned that you have a passion for is comics.
Yeah.
When you say comics, are we talking about Sunday morning comics? Are we talking about graphic novels? Are we talking about the old superhero comic books?
Probably not the old superhero comic books, though. My son really loves the Black Panther by Ta-Nehisi Coates, which is fantastic. And a lot of my students, that's the way that they're introduced to graphic narrative and comics. But yeah, and yes, to all of the above, for sure, because it's a medium. It's just another way to write. And I find it beautiful to read. I love art. I've always loved art. I had a very sort of rocky series of majors where I was trying to figure out what I love to do, because I'm so interested in so many things. So one of my many majors was art education. I wanted to teach little kids, because I just find little kids so inspiring. They're so open with making art, and there's not that critic. They just do it because it's fun and because it's natural, and so that always just so appealed to me and inspired me. Linda Berry, who's a writer that I teach all the time, always talks about getting back to that childlike joy of making art and just creation for the sake of doing it, because it feels good to us as human beings. So yeah, so all of the above. I love Roz Chast, who, is a cartoonist for the New Yorker and does those sort of one-off single panel cartoons or like a series. And then I love the longer graphic novels. I love graphic memoir. My son is 13. And so a lot of the books that he was first excited about reading, and would like disappear into a book, were comics. So I feel like it's important and can really help kids get excited about reading. So yeah, and it's fun to teach too. I just love it. Yeah, it's interdisciplinary. Cole Klosser and I teach these wonderful interdisciplinary classes, usually at Brick City, though this semester we're doing it on Zoom virtually, because of everything going on.
I see that he teaches Art 320, graphic narrative.
Yeah, so yeah, that's actually a cross-listed class. So it's the same as my graphic narrative 2 class in English, and we just teach it together. Mm-hmm.
Okay, English 216.
316 is the one that's cross-listed. Yeah. So, and then now, of course, we have just starting this past fall semester, Art and Design is offering a sequential art track to the BFA in design degree. So now you can choose a comics track that we call it sequential art. And then in English, we're offering a graphic narrative certificate. So students that aren't necessarily getting their degree in design, but want to show, a graduate school or a potential employer that they have this expertise, will now have the certificate to sort of show they've taken these particular classes and have this skill set and this experience with this certain area of literature.
Very cool. So an interdisciplinary certificate in that case.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a blend of English classes and design classes.
When does it begin?
Well, it's still making its way up, the curricular process. I think it just passed the college level, so that's exciting. So we're hoping that it will be formally in the course catalog, and students can choose it in the fall of 2021.
Excellent. Look forward to that.
Yeah, I'm so excited. It's been a long time coming, so I'm thrilled.
That reminds me of a logistical question. You mentioned the class was cross-listed.
Mm-hmm.
So are you co-teaching it?
Yeah, so we co-teach it. So traditionally in person, like Cole and I would get together, we plan our curriculum beforehand. And then usually a traditional class session would be like Cole would do part of the day, I would do part of the day. Or if he was doing like a larger presentation, let's say about inking, that would maybe take more time. That day would be focused and he would take up the majority. Or if I was introducing a new genre like the magical realist mode, I would maybe take the full day. But yeah, with online, we're experimenting on how to do that because no one wants to sit on Zoom for that long. So we're kind of, we're always there together. Everything is so interrelated. You can't really separate it out. With comics, the illustrations are narrative. And so, I mean, everything is so combined. But yeah, it's so fun to co-teach. I can't recommend it enough. It's hard logistically, like you said, like we had to figure out this whole cross-listed thing. And now these certificates are all interdisciplinary between English and art and design. But I think that's meeting the way that modern students don't want to be put on this tiny, narrow path. They really want to be holistic artists. They want to do film. They want to do photography. They want to draw. They want to write. They want to make videos. They want to do all these things, which is so exciting. So that's what I love about our college is we provide formal avenues for that kind of work to happen. And we want our students to be fully themselves and reach the range of their interests and talents. But yeah, it's been really fun to co-teach. It's the first time I've ever done that. And Cole and I have been doing it now for 5 years. I think we've been doing it for 5 years. And then now the track is there and it's very exciting. I just read constantly, but I'm aware that a lot of people don't do that or can't. Mm-hmm. I encourage them to listen to audiobooks, anytime, any way you can get that in your brain.
When you asked me about podcasts and the growth of podcasts, like I've been listening to a lot more of them, but for me, the podcasts have eaten into my audiobook time.
Yeah.
I've always been an audiobook listener and I can listen to them really fast, but it's easier. In some ways, it's a different kind of attention.
It is.
To just listen to a bunch of podcasts and a little bit more difficult to stick with a long.
My partner, Coop, he listens to audiobooks constantly. And I can't, I love looking. I can't, my mind wanders. I forget where we are. It goes too slow. I would have to read them. But yeah, I don't know. I just love looking at it. And I also like watching how sentences are on. I don't know.
See, I've always been a slow visual reader. Mm-hmm. I never really mastered the ability to read fast or like,
yeah.
Because some people can speed read with very good retention.
Yeah.
But if I had a superpower, it would be listening to things on like 2 or 3x speed with retention.
That's incredible. Wow. How interesting. Yeah. And some students will be like, does it count? Do you count it as being read if I listen to an audiobook? And I always say yes. Mm-hmm. But that is something that like people go back and forth on in pedagogical.
Yeah. Isn't that an interesting question? Because
it is.
I was thinking about that the other day, and it seems to me like, so if we say I read a book,
right,
there's a cultural sort of cachet to that.
Yes.
And the idea is if you only listened to it, then right. You can't really claim to have sat quietly in your chair with your bubble pipe and actually read a book, you know?
Right. Yeah.
But to me, it's about ingesting the story,
Yeah.
And
to me, like I tell my students, like if you can do both, that would be great. But if you need to read, if you are like in the car and you commute all the time and the way that you get this book read is through an audiobook, that absolutely counts. But I think as writers, we have to look at how the sentences are deployed on the page. We have to look at things like where the paragraphs are, just the physical experience of reading is so important when you're a writer.
Pagination.
Yes, pagination. Exactly. Exactly. Which is so funny because a lot of people get confused and think we're a pagan store. I can't tell you. It's probably at least 3 times a week we get people coming in. And I'm like,
where's all the Wicca books?
Yes. They're like, isn't this a pagan store? And we're like, no, because that's not even how you spell pagan. So I don't know. But anyway, it's confusing. But yeah, so I think it's important to look at the book. But for my son, for example, I just want him to be excited about reading. And so for me, like if he's listening to an audiobook, yay! Like if that's all he did, I'd be excited. Ecstatic.
That's I relate to that 100%. When I was little, my mom read books to us out loud.
Yeah.
Just so much.
That's so wonderful.
From when I was very, very young. And so we read Lord of the Rings and as one example. And when we finished Lord of the Rings, we'd go back to the beginning and read it again.
Yeah. It's so important, like to just to be with a book, however that is, if you're listening to it, but I feel like if you're formally studying writing and you are wanting to be a writer and you want to major in writing, you need to be looking at words on the page as well as listening. I think a combination I feel like I should probably listen to more audiobooks because it's so much of a way that people are interacting with literature, that readers are interacting with literature. I love the Lincoln and the Bardo audiobook.
That's a great example. That was a book I found incomprehensible on the page. I tried and I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't understand what's happening. But when I listened to it with different voices, it was a little bit.
I have heard that from so many people about that book. And in fact, when students or readers come into the shop and tell me that they had a hard time reading that book, I always tell them, go listen to the audio.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You make a good point about needing to like see the words on the page, because I can't think of any counterfactual where there's a work of literature that was composed without using the written words and only like into a dictaphone, and then it goes from there straight to the reader's ears. Maybe oral tradition.
Yeah, for sure. Certain kinds.
But that's certainly not the way it's done now.
Yeah, there was one that I was listening to NPR and it was only out on audiobook, but it's like, for sure they wrote it down
in the composition process.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's good to be aware of all these things. And now as an indie bookseller, in fact, I was going back and forth with my sister about this the other day, because audiobooks are one of those tricky things where Amazon and Audible really have a monopoly on audiobooks. There is a company called Libro FM, where you can support independent bookstores through your audiobook purchase, but not all books that are audiobooks. Audible has like exclusive audiobook rights with certain books, so you have to have an Audible account.
That's not good
to get it. And so, actually Raven Bookstore that I mentioned earlier, they have a really interesting book that is actually coming out. The owner, Danny Kane, wrote it about like the way that Amazon is intruding on literature as a commodity.
Yeah.
And it's scary when you think about it.
Wow, yeah. And that brings up the benefit of book as object again.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, a used book can have 1,000 lives in the hands of thousands of people. Yes. And no big data company knows who has it or had any control over whether you got it or not.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's so new to me. And I learn so much more every day about book selling and just publishing and the process, which I hope helps me be a better writing teacher.
Oh, no doubt.
It's been a hard year. I haven't seen my family. My family lives in Southern California. We usually go back and visit at least 4 times a year, and I haven't seen them in over a year. And it's hard for me because I miss them and I'm very close with my family. And, babies have been born, and my little niece, is tiny. And so a year is a long time to miss when they're that little. But at the same time, there's so much to be grateful for. I'm so grateful for this community. And I'm very fortunate that my family and my friends, I roll that all into the community, because so many of my personal relationships are related to the arts. And a lot of my very best friends here in town are also teachers and educators or work in nonprofit or artists in some way. We would get messages saying like, how can we help you? We just want to support you. All the people over the holidays who said, I'm really making an effort to shop local this year. That made a huge difference for us. But so I don't know, I could go on, but I'm very grateful for community. And Missouri State has always been a part of that. Like I said, ever since I came to Missouri State as a student, it's just been a formative part of my entire life.
Hey, Jay, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Doing good.
I recently had a conversation with Jen Murvin, which the audience just heard, and I'm so thankful to her for sharing her story and thoughts with us.
That's one of the things that's truly inspiring with the people we work with at the university, but specifically within the Reynolds College. You have people, stories. It's stories. It's the story of Jen Murvin, who works full-time at the university as an exceptional teacher and writer, and then also is connecting with faculty and people in the community through a small business. I just think it's an incredible story, really incredible. And when people ask me, what do you enjoy about your work? it sort of goes outside of anything I do. It's the things that I get to see, the stories that are told, the art and the research and the teaching and all those exceptional things really does give meaning to what we do together.
I had some ideas for potential themed episodes. When I was talking to Jen, she was talking about a colleague of hers. She had this colleague who was really interested in this concept of narrative medicine, Dr. Shannon Wooden. And so narrative medicine got me thinking about just health in general. And I know in the communication department, we have health communication and a lot of interesting scholarship that goes on related to health. So then I thought, okay, there's an English person talking about health and comm people talking about health. And I know there's such a thing as music therapy, which is in the music department, and who knows what other applications of arts and letters disciplines go into either therapeutic ends or promoting public health or personal health in some way. So that's an idea that I'm kind of germinating right now.
Yeah, I'm reminded of, we teach communication skills and talk so much about power skills. And I know that we've recently exchanged some messages about listening and how important listening course is. And obviously that's a course that's offered in the Department of Communication within the college. It's just amazing how you can take something that might seem so simple or that we take for granted. And if we can actually listen to a meaningful message and set a goal or change in some way, it's really profound. Or to your point about health, how a unplanned conversation can be a meaningful moment. It can be something that truly can inspire someone to change a behavior or to maybe even be in a workplace situation, and you can experience a life lesson where you have a different outlook on that day, or change a behavior that can impact other people for years to come.
You mentioned listening, and it occurs to me that there's a chapter in the listening textbook that we were talking about like listening in health contexts. And it had to do specifically with like the doctor's office, the type of listening doctors need to use. And then conversely, the type of listening that patients need to use, which are different styles of listening, and the willingness to be an advocate for yourself and say like, now, wait a minute, I'm not understanding what you're saying. Can you repeat it? As a patient? And that's a listening skill, to try to get people to repeat something you didn't understand.
Well, I'm also reminded of the importance of, I'll just share, something that I've been thinking a lot about and really living is anticipated grieving. And that's something that is really hard to prepare for and to really understand. I mean, we can all read whether that's traditional stages of grieving, and we all would experience those stages in different ways. But when you're anticipating loss, or if you're in the position of a patient with a terminal illness, the power of a physician or a nurse or a family member or a friend, and the overall power that being able to just be with another person and to have another person really listen to you and be in the moment with you is something that I think that we take for granted. And when we think about physician training and all of the research that we have in health communication, it's really difficult to train nurses and physicians in, I guess, what we would traditionally call bedside manner.
Oh, absolutely.
It's really, really difficult to sort of train that, I guess.
I can't imagine. It seems like, with that, you either have it temperamentally or else it's going to be very difficult to learn.
Yeah, we do. And we talk about that as in political communication as well, or in public leadership is temperament, whether someone's fit for a position or not. Temperament tends to be the way we talk about that or describe that.
Well, you said you were doing some reading or thinking about anticipated grieving. Can I ask you more about that? Where did the interest in that topic come from for you most recently?
I think a lot of it came about with just so much loss. We have a lot of anticipated grieving that's across the world. I have a friend, someone I went to school with, and both of his parents are victims to COVID-19. And so Just have been thinking a lot about that. And I've talked with people, my close friends and family members, as well as colleagues, just about the overall grieving process of losing parents or loved ones. And so my mom and dad both passed away pretty close together. My father passed away in 2018 and my mom passed away in late 2019. It's just very, very difficult. So I find myself really thinking a lot about that and then also reading about it. And so that's where the notion of anticipated grieving sort of came to mind, because we think of the traditional stages of grieving from losing a friend, a loved one, etc. But when you're anticipating someone, if you have a family member, friend, colleague, even if it's an unknown, where you're maybe someone that you don't know and you learn that they've are facing terminal diagnosis, just the process that one goes through to anticipate loss, it's overwhelming. And so I know that that's a really dark or sad topic, but it's something that I, especially as a communication researcher, it's something I've been drawn to over the past year or so.
I'm sure that's something that's heavy on the minds of so many of us. I heard something about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who, coined originally the 5 stages of grief, just recently added a 6th stage.
Really?
And it occurred to me that anticipated grief would be like stage 0, or like a negative stage. But yeah, stage 6 was something about long-term healing, or the idea that it never fully goes away. People say, haven't you got over that yet, or something? But it doesn't go away, it just changes. And so they were talking more about that additional stage of grief.
Sounds like an extension to acceptance, that acceptance isn't just a switch, that you have to, in the moment, say, okay, I've realized and accepted that this is what's happened, but then there's that next process of being, where it's not, you just don't arrive at acceptance. You may have a starting point, and then it sounds like that next stage is a continuance of sort of the process of acceptance over periods of time.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's certainly the five stages in the last stage. And here she is talking about the 7 stages. Sorry, I'm like Googling this in real time, which is probably not good etiquette. Shock or disbelief, denial, anger, bargaining, guilt, depression, acceptance, and hope. So maybe hope is the term that they used. But if you were to add anticipated grief, then that could be 8 stages.
Well, and that's why when you look at the various guests on the podcast, whether we're celebrating or spotlighting performance or reading or music, so many of the things that we have within the Reynolds College of Arts and Letters, those can shape healing, and it lifts people up, and that's one of the things that I really miss. And I know that we'll get back to it soon, but I really miss live theater and live musical performances, because those are things that are experiences that are uplifting and motivational and really give us a chance to heal. And if we're in a challenging time personally or nationally or globally, there's so much music that can inspire and does inspire hope. That's why I'm really ready to go back to the theater, and I miss that live music, all of those things.
Absolutely. I was reflecting on that and thinking, College of Arts and Letters has traditionally been called lovingly the College of Cheap Dates, because there's always something great going on. You can go to, whether it's a theatrical performance, a reading, recital, on and on. And of course, in this time, those have been greatly reduced, although they're still happening, and people have been very nimble. You were talking about the word pivot earlier. A lot of these have gone online or changed form, but it's fair to say that they're reduced in number this past year. And so I just had this curiosity about, like, what is people's entertainment diets these days, and what are people missing the most about the things that they used to do entertainment wise, going to the theater? And have you had the opportunity to attend any arts events in any form lately, or if not, what are you missing?
Well, I know that's something that we've been in conversation about, Jay, and so I took that as a challenge. I knew that you were interested in talking about that, and so it really is different with not having the live, because in arts and letters we have so much live theater. I mean, it's almost every night, and that has been different. But I've actually attended a couple of town halls, online town halls recently, and I know that we may be overusing the word town hall, and it certainly is different than a face-to-face town hall. But I was really inspired by, I just attended as a Zoom participant, but it was the Department of English. And there were a number of faculty panelists, and we were talking about advising and the different courses and tracks within the Department of English. And in a different way, the Department of Theater and Dance also had a town hall, but it was an announcement for the academic season for next year, when we are already thinking about fall 2021, 2022. And then of course and I think this is a great segment for the future. And I know that we'll be talking about Tent Theater soon on an up and coming episode. And so those are a couple of things. Most recently, I realized, well, these town halls are events that I often say that, my job is to show up. And so while I showed up, with driven by curiosity, I also learned a lot. And that was really a pleasure to take in. One of the letters areas being the Department of English, and then of course the Department of Theater and Dance. As far as the other aspect of your question is what I've been taking in as far as entertainment, I have to admit that I'm truly a news junkie. So when I try to wind down, it's not necessarily the best thing to watch cable news, but I'm fascinated by it, and I sort of surf. And the main interest is really what's going on.
Yeah.
And, I'm fascinated with journalism and storytelling, and just so many of the different perspectives of the world and differences of opinion related to, current events. What about you?
Well, my podcast listening is up, and my Netflix watching is up as well. In this past year, one television show that I've enjoyed, and it relates to it was kind of actually the thing that made me raise this question of entertainment diet, is the television show on the History Channel called Alone. It's like a survival type reality show where the participants are dropped off in the woods of somewhere in Canada, and they have to record their own, because they're there by themselves, have to record their own activities of building shelter, securing food, hunting for food, trapping, fishing. But one interesting thing that I noticed was after their immediate needs were met, all of them turned their attention in some way or another to entertainment. One of them was like whittling chess pieces, and another contestant turned his attention to making a 3-stringed instrument, and someone made a drum out of this old animal hide that they found. And it just occurred to me that there's something so deeply human and just elemental about the arts, and doing something that's beyond just living, that adds an outlet for creativity and expression. And I was refreshed by that, because here I am sitting there watching Netflix and there's this, I don't know, some people look down their noses and say, you shouldn't, quote unquote, waste your time in frivolous pursuits. You should be doing some serious work or something. But the fact is, recreation is a human need. And that I thought, I don't know, I just really needed to be reminded of that during that time. So
I agree. I think that the topic of entertainment, or just the notion of diet, of what are we taking in related to different genres, news. But when we imagine the history book of 2020 and 2021, I think we'll probably see a major shift in what it means to go to the movies. What does it mean to go to a show? It's fascinating.
Oh yeah.
We've definitely had shifts in so many things, and in terms of experience.
That's it for this episode of RCOAL Conversations. If you want to learn more about Jen and her work as a curator of literature, visit paginationbookshop.com. There you'll find curated book lists, including picture books and middle reader books. You'll find an anti-racism reading list, which is always 15% off, as well as other lists and products curated by Jen and Team Pagination. There's also lots of events in the works at Pagination. In the summer, book club will be back, and it will be virtual. I'm also marking my calendar now for March 25th, when Pagination will virtually host Sophronia Scott, who has a BA in English from Harvard and an MFA in writing from Vermont College of Fine Arts, and is the author of the new book, The Seeker and the Monk, Everyday Conversations with Thomas Merton. Again, that's March 25th. As always, please subscribe to RCOAL Conversations wherever you get your podcasts and share the show on social media. You can also follow the college on Facebook at msu.rcoal and on Twitter at msu_rcoal. If you have ideas for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. You can find Sean Wall on Twitter or email me at jhoward@missouristate.edu. Thanks for listening.